Hello and welcome to Lapping Analytics. My name is Jimmy Lapping. I'm a psychologist and statistician, and in this video I'm going to talk about single case designs and qualitative comparative analysis. And why this topic for a video? Well, most of the research in social and health sciences and related fields is about collecting data of groups of people or subjects otherwise and try to generalize to some extent the findings of these groups studied to other people or subjects that have not been studied but could be expected to be similar in the matter we are studying. But for example, in clinical settings, and to some extent also in the context of education or finance, the interest often lies in particular individuals or particular subjects. To start, in the financial markets, the gold price or valuation metrics of a particular stock are examples of single subjects that can be followed using single case designs. Likewise, in education, single case designs can be used to monitor growth and development at the level of the individual learner. And in clinical settings, key questions include whether a given intervention is effective for a particular patient and also which behavioral factors may contribute to a more or lesser extent to specific health outcomes. What these questions have in common is that generalizability to other subjects is not the primary focus. So in this video, I'm going to give a clinical example of one specific individual who is followed during a specific time interval with the interest of getting a better understanding of why this individual may be experiencing a particular problem. And this is where single case designs come in. We collect data on the same variables of interest for the same subject for a given number of days, weeks, or depending on what is being investigated, even months or years. In the example for the remainder of this video, the individual under study decided to contact their GP because for the last couple of months or so they have been suffering of dizziness. And while after a conversation with the GP, they decide to keep track of a number of consumption behaviors that may or may not explain the dizziness to some extent. Part of the reason why the patient contacted their GP is because they believe that the dizziness started since they began taking a new type of sleeping pill. That is, the patient's impression is that every time they take a sleeping pill before going to bed, they wake up dizzy the next morning. And apart from sleeping problems, well, the patient seems to have a fairly healthy lifestyle in that there is regular exercise, no smoking, no job that involves night shifts or crazy amounts of hours, but they do from time to time enjoy a good glass of beer, wine, whiskey, and drinks alike. So, in agreement with the GP, the patient keeps a 4-week diary starting with a Monday and ending with a Sunday, during which they keep track of working hours, exercise routine, food intake, numbers of hours sleep, and alcohol consumption. And at a first glance, it appears that the sleeping pills and the alcohol can explain dizziness to some extent. That is, on day 1, you see an X, meaning that there was no dizziness in the morning and no sleeping pill or alcohol intake the night before. But next, the full pack occurs. That is, in the night of day 1, the patient enjoyed a drink at some point in the evening and took a sleeping pill before going to sleep and woke up dizzy on the morning of day 2. In this chart, you see quite a few X's, meaning there were quite a few days with no dizziness in the morning, no alcohol take the night before, and no sleeping pill the night before either. Then there are a few days on which either a sleeping pill or alcohol was consumed at night, but no dizziness occurred the next morning. But in all 4 weeks, you see that the patient had both alcohol and a sleeping pill on the Friday night and woke up dizzy on the Saturday morning, day 6 in the week. Of course, it is difficult to establish any kind of causal relationship between sleeping pill and or alcohol on the one hand and dizziness on the other hand, because this is a so-called observational single case design. I mean, if we could randomize sleeping pill intake and alternate with a placebo pill, which looks and tastes like the sleeping pill but does not have that key sleep related ingredient that the actual sleeping pill has, we could end up with a somewhat stronger single case experimental design, which, at least for the sleeping pill factor, might facilitate causal inference to some extent. If that is of interest, I can recommend literature on such a design. Just leave a comment below the video and I'm happy to share. But let's say the GP considered such a randomization of sleeping pills alternated with placebos unethical, and hence they chose the design we are seeing now. How can we interpret these outcomes? What we cannot do with this dataset is use complex statistical methods because we simply have too little data. If we had time series of, say, a full quarter of days, which would be about 91 days, we would have somewhat more options for statistical modeling, and even more so if we followed the patient for a year. However, in practice, we do not commonly follow people for months or years to make clinical decisions that are aimed at helping people improve their lives. So this is where qualitative comparative analysis comes in. Since for this example we focus entirely on the sleeping pills and alcohol intake, if these factors explain dizziness to some extent, morning dizziness could be expected to occur if the night before the patient consumed alcohol, a sleeping pill, or both. And two key measures in qualitative comparative analysis are consistency and coverage. Consistency is the extent to which the occurrence of a contributing factor leads to the expected outcome, whereas coverage is about the question what proportion of observed outcomes, here dizziness, can be explained by a given factor or combination thereof. Let me explain this with actual numbers. In this specific example, each of the three possibilities, that is, sleeping pill, alcohol, or both, has a coverage of 1. In other words, a perfect coverage, 100%. Now, what does that mean? Well, there are 6 days in this chart where dizziness was observed, and in all 6 cases a sleeping pill was taken the night before, and there was also alcohol involved. So all the cases of dizziness can be explained by sleeping pill, alcohol, or both, without any kind of further quantification which of sleeping pill or alcohol contributes more. However, when we look at consistency, the picture is differently. To start, for the sleeping pill, we find a consistency of 0.667. Why? Because in this chart here of 28 days, we see a sleeping pill on 9 days. But only 6 of those cases resulted in dizziness. In other words, while in 2/3 of the cases where the sleeping pill was taken, there was dizziness the next morning, in the other 1/3 of the cases there was no dizziness. And when we look at alcohol, the consistency is worse because there are 11 cases of alcohol consumption, of which only 6 were followed by dizziness. And 6 divided by 11 is about 0.545. So both for the sleeping pill and for alcohol, we see quite a few exceptions to the rules, and generally consistency values below 0.75 or even below zero point 0.8 are considered insufficient. However, when we take the combination of sleeping pill and alcohol, we get a consistency of 100%, hence 1. Why? Because in all 6 cases where dizziness was experienced by the patient when waking up, they had consumed both alcohol and a sleeping pill the night before. Although we cannot establish causality from the data acquired with this kind of design, it is interesting to observe that while the patient suspected the dizziness to explain the dizziness to be related to the use of the new sleeping pill, hence to know that the sleeping pill to explain the dizziness. Given the data at hand, the GP could recommend the patient to refrain from alcohol consumption on nights when they take a sleeping pill in order to check if the dizziness ceases to exist or at least is strongly reduced in frequency, occurring only incidentally instead of once or twice every week. And while the example in this video uses simple dichotomies in the sense of absence versus presence, instead of degrees of dizziness and degrees of alcohol intake or number of sleeping pills taken if there were days more than one sleeping pill, qualitative comparative analysis also works for situations when such degrees or even continuous scales instead of dichotomies are concerned. And I will show in 1 or 2 videos on my channel soon some examples of such situations where where you have ordinal degrees or even continuous scales, and show how you can still do qualitative comparative analysis. But I hope you find this video useful. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, whatever, just leave a comment below the video. And on my channel you will find plenty more videos related to methods for qualitative, quantitative and mixed methods research. Having said, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you soon.